fans of the planet's hottest entertainment with an edge. Jaime En Fuego here, and if it's April 8th, happy Rex Manning Day, and I welcome you to another installment of my namesake program, Enfuegotainment. That is right, and you can just call me Fuego for short. If you're new to the proceedings, this is where, I cover all of my pop culture sensibilities and silliness, and this is going to be a retro fuego review of sorts, which is something new that I'm doing for both Patreon and on YouTube. And that's where I dive into a film that I have either never seen before or that I saw maybe bits and pieces of but do not recall to any like really crystal clear degree. And today that is none other than Empire Records. Yep, if the glare is not going to kill me here. Yes, Empire Records came out 1995, and it bombed at the box office. A lot of people, especially critics, were just really brutal to this film. They said it was essentially a music video masquerading with a plot in between these segments of song and so on and so forth. And the thing is, though, as a lot of these 90s grungy slackery kind of comedies ended up finding an audience, at least if they were pretty good films. And this is a pretty damn good film, and one that I had actually never seen in this remix special fan edition that, if I'm not mistaken, is long out of print and has seen a digital release but not a physical, like a Blu-ray release in, this extended version, which adds, I think, like 16 more minutes to sit. Yes, as it describes here, it was 16 minutes of cool added footage not seen in theaters. And that's because of the fact that this was a film that was brutalized in the post-production process. It was originally supposed to be a story about all these different peeps who work at this record store, and it was supposed to take place over 2 days, but as they chopped nearly 40 minutes from the finished product, it was whittled down to 1. But I mean, since I don't really remember the 91-minute version, and I think this one is 107 minutes, yeah, there you go. So at least from what I saw in my research, they basically cut out a couple characters, and as I said, condensed it down to a single day and so on. And obviously, character development is going to suffer in that regard, maybe some certain subplot points and things. But yeah, I was charmed by this movie. It's definitely not up there with like the Kevin Smith stuff of the time, or Doug Liman's Swingers or anything like that, which are a few of my favorites. But I mean, this does have a very Clerks vibe to it in a lot of ways, and I know that that was the indie darling in a lot of ways about, slackers working at a store, but, this being a record store, not a convenience store, there's definitely a little bit more of a, I don't want to say an air of arrogance, but that is how a lot of record store people are perceived. It was a topic discussed in High Fidelity, for God's sake, and these characters at this kind of pseudo Tower Records kind of place do in fact have those sensibilities. And I mean, it's got a great cast. You've got Liv Tyler, very young Liv Tyler, albeit, very young Renee Zellweger, I don't know. I mean, recent Oscar winner as well, by the way. Ethan Embry, I believe, who I saw 2 years later in Can't Hardly Wait when he endeared himself to me, which is why I found it very funny when they were playing the Dire Straits Romeo and Juliet, because they played that in this movie and they also played in Can't Hardly Wait. Both of those are big ensemble, kind of teenagey, coming of age films that are very music centric with their soundtracks. Terrific soundtrack for this one. The cast is some less memorable than others, obviously, but there's a lot of really amusing sequences, most notably the aforementioned Rex Manning and the Mon Amour song and all that stuff. I mean, the music video is utterly hilarious. It is a constant point of it's like the punchline of jokes throughout. And I guess it was originally only supposed to be just this little 15-second segment, but when they were filming in North Carolina, they filmed an entire 4+ minute music video, so they had a lot more to cull from when they were actually putting the finished product together. So yeah, I don't know what the condensed version of this film would be like with its presumed more choppy editing, and I'm glad that I don't remember, and that this is now all that I will really think about as far as Empire Records goes. So, I mean, long story short, story-wise, exactly, redundant, But so you got this dude Lucas, and Lucas is essentially, he's getting to close the store for the very first time, and he's supposed to not touch his boss Joe's cigars, beer, and he is supposed to not touch his drumsticks and also count the money twice. Big thing to keep in mind here. He's on the straight and narrow initially until this woman right at midnight comes to the store, and he, lo and behold, decides to get a little boisterous, and so he is messing with the boss's drumsticks, smoking the stove, has open beer, recounting the money and everything, but then he comes across, lo and behold, some apparent plans for their Empire Records, store, which is very, as I said, pseudo tower, which, there used to be these big, huge record stores, everybody, and thankfully we're still blessed here in Arizona to have a chain called Zia Records that used to be much smaller, like single story, whatever, and they're all still single story, but, they were very, like, low ceilings, dimly lit, stuff like that, not like big, bright, boisterous places like Tower often was, in my estimation. But Zia has actually thrived by bringing in, not just, vinyl and CDs and, tapes and, things like that, but, now they sell DVDs and, books and all kinds of, it's just basically a pop culture mecca for everything that I personally love as far as art and creativity and silliness and darkness too. I mean, a little bit of everything as far as that goes. And so, yeah, that's what we're blessed to still have Zias around, here in Arizona, and there's also a couple in Nevada. But I mean, back in the day, in the heyday of the 80s and this being the mid 90s, the big record stores were all the rage. But Empire is on the verge of being sucked up by one of those big chains, as opposed to remaining a presumably beloved independent. And so Lucas decides to take the 9,000 buckaroos from that day, and as opposed to, doing cash drop and having it all ready for his boss the next day, he decides to drive to Atlantic City and just, try to save the business, basically. And it seems all well and good at first, but yeah, even after an initial hot hand, it just doesn't end up working out. So he's got to be held accountable. Joe the next day is freaking out, but, Joe is actually a boss with a very good heart. Played by Joe Tangent, his name is totally eluding me. And, well, I mean, he's an esteemed Italian actor that you've probably seen in tons of different things. But, yes, he's a face that, especially if you remember a lot of, 80s, 90s stuff, I mean, he brings some warmth to this role, and the fact that all of his little minions of sorts that, are the aforementioned, Ethan Embry and, Liv Tyler and Renee Zellweger and a bunch of other, very interesting supporting characters and whatnot. He does genuinely care about them. He's concerned about all of their personal problems, which range from, wanting to have sex with the Rex Manning guy, which is what Liv Tyler forever wants to do. She wants to offer herself up to him when he's doing this record store signing, and he is a very kind of, oh boy, he's somewhere between Chris Isaac and maybe, like, I don't know, he's like one of those kind of cheese croony, kind of sex symbol-y kind of guys, and yeah, the music is terrible, and he is a fake tan, ruffled shirt, almost like pink lip gloss wearing kind of schmucky dude, and for whatever reason, he's like a Tiger Beat obsession of our Liv Tyler character, and so yeah, she decides that when the record store signing is going down, she is going to give herself to him, so to speak. And then you've got the suicidal girl who's Sinead O'Connor's her hair. You've got Renee Zellweger, who is Tyler's best friend and is kind of a sleut, and has misgivings about that, and it has created tension within their friendship. And of course, Tyler's character has this handsome Zach Morrissey type who's an artist and is all obsessed with her. So I mean, yes, I will admit there's a lot of caricatures in this film. There's a lot of, dare I say, stereotypical characters, and it doesn't, in the storytelling department, bring a lot of just novel nature to what we're seeing here, and it is a little defanged and declawed. It's definitely, even though this is the unrated cut of it, where in succession they drop like 3 or 4 F-bombs, like boom, 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 I'm positive this was initially a PG-13 film, and it was really playing to like the Clueless crowd, which I think came out the same year, if I'm not mistaken. That was a box office hit, this was a box office bomb. They obviously have both found their respective cult statuses over the years, despite the fact that Clueless, being the Shakespeare adaptation, was, beloved by both critics and fans. Whatever, it is what it is. But Empire found its its audience for a reason, and that's because despite the fact that yes, it is some run-of-the-mill scenarios, well, except for the Guar bit, that's definitely as wacky as it gets when he's eating the pot brownies and he's like sucked into the music video. That's pretty amusing. And but yeah, I mean, yes, you do have some tropes and you do have some familiar situations, but isn't that what growing up and just those formative years of adolescence and post-adolescence that are like late teens and early 20s, which is what all of these characters essentially are, is all about? Yeah, that is. I mean, we all experience a lot of the same things, and I think that's why these themes are still relatable, even if they don't necessarily dive into the most unique of territory. What I do find the most unique is the passion for music of all of these people, and I'm extremely amused by them fighting over who gets to pick the music, and like taking a CD and melting the bottom of it with a lighter so it's unplayable because the one coworker doesn't like the stuff. Even to just sitting on the sidewalk and mid-shift or whatever and debating the merits of the bass playing of Primus versus the Pixies, and how the Misfits were such a great punk band that a lot of people have kind of forgotten about. I mean, those are the bits where the film comes off as the most genuine and the most interesting to me, as well as just the eclectic nature of this mid-90s soundtrack. It was most definitely the post-grunge shifting into alternative kind of lighter sort of. I mean, you've got like Cranberries, Better Than Ezra, Dead Hot Workshop, Gin Blossoms. I mean, tons and tons and tons and tons of other stuff. The aforementioned, you've got like some AC/DC in there. You've got Doors references. I mean, it definitely shows that these are music passionate peeps that work at this particular spot. Like, there's one bit where a customer comes up to the really like skeevy looking guy who works at a pizza place and who also works there, but might be the most knowledgeable music-wise of everybody there. Dude's like, yo, I want Clapton on vinyl. And he's like, well, what Clapton do you want? You want Clapton with the Yardbirds? You want Clapton with Cream? You want Clapton solo? You want Clapton with Derek and the Dominoes? I mean, he just starts going off about pretty much every single project that they could potentially have, either Clapton solo or contributing with a main act on vinyl. So he's just like, be more specific, man. What do you want? What do you want? And so I always wanted to work at a record store. Growing up, I did get hired at Zia at one particular time in the early 2000s, and unfortunately, the pay wasn't probably quite enough to do the bills, man. But it would have been the perfect, in college, or just if you are the eternal kind of just, I don't know, very, very similar to our two characters in High Fidelity in a lot of ways too, being the Jack Black character and the other Warmier character whose name I can't recall. But I mean, there's just something very cool about the essence of having your employer be that sort of spot, and it always just, you sit around and listen to and talk and file music all the time. And for somebody like me who's neurotic and has everything from my films to my graphic novels and all that different stuff, it's genreized, it's alphabetized. It would have been the perfect sort of thing for me, man. But, once again, the biggest amusing connection for me as far as just the genuine nature of all of this is the fact that apparently the chick who wrote the script for this, the woman, the lady, to be a little more respectful, I'm not going to give that disregard, but yeah, she apparently worked at the Tower Records at Christown, 19th Avenue, just south of Montebello, that I used to go to and wait for Ozzy tickets and stuff at. I mean, I bought many a ticket. Back when people used to wait in line for concert tickets, yeah, remember when that was a thing before all of the scalpers and, resale sites were just totally bending us over with no lube? Yeah, I distinctively remember this tower. I had older friends, older siblings of friends that worked there and stuff, and the fact that she worked there, she wrote the script, the local Arizona connection, Christown, man, I mean, it's since been torn down. I mean, boy, it closed shortly after I graduated high school, and I think it was 04 or 05, and it's all been torn down. The Peter Piper that was next to it, the tower, all the other stuff that was there, now it's a parking lot for our light rail transit. So that tells you a lot. But, even though it's not it's not going to go down as one of my personal favorite music movies or anything like that, because I didn't distinctively remember watching it over and over and over when I was younger, like I did Mallrats, like I did Dazed and Confused, like I did, Clerks and, Half-Baked and Swingers and so many of these others. I mean, it's still definitely one that I can appreciate from the awesomeness of its soundtrack, from just the the warmth and the sweetness of the camaraderie of all of these characters, even if they're not necessarily supremely distinctively defined. I still really appreciate the setting. I appreciate the care of the manager. Lucas is in a lot of ways the most amusing and distinctive character in this for me, you know, especially some of his wacky dialogue and stuff. You know, I regret nothing. I just regret what I have not done. I don't regret anything that I've done. I regret what I have not done. And just his weird philosophical silliness and being asked to stay on the couch, and then he's just like trying to keep his like foot on the couch and like carry a cushion and all this other stuff. His character, he's kind of schmucky at first, but then as you figure out a little bit more about him, they try to portray the kid who's the shoplifter Warren Beatty in the same way. I didn't, and he's stealing gangster rap and metal, which I think is so funny. But yeah, I mean, he comes in with a gun, and in this day and age, yeah, he wouldn't have been back at the party at the very end, and so. And everything does get wrapped up in a nice little package. You know, they're going to lose the store, and then it's like, let's have a big party and save the store. Yeah! So, it's sweet, but I don't know. Once again, it's nothing that's going to totally blow you away, unless you probably saw it back in the day. And so, but hey, I still had a ton of fun with Empire Records, and it's a very just sentimental relic for me for a time when I was first starting to grow up, because I was younger than these kids, obviously, at this particular time. In '95, I was like, what, 11 or almost 12, something like that. So that ages me, obviously, but, you know, I was the younger kid who was looking up to people like these characters, and just all of their angst and, you know, lust and just, I don't know, just zest for life and art and music in general. And that is the one thing that definitely comes off, once again, is genuine in this, is just a love for music and the friendship that it can create amongst us. So, I've been Jaime En Fuego. You can find more on all social media sectors like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and yes, once again, I've done so many different things on this channel over the course of the last year or so since relaunching it. There's a lot more time to stay indoors with the current craziness of this world, but I'm not here to talk about that. This is a film that brings you back to a sweeter, simpler time in a lot of ways. And yes, I have covered a lot of Star Wars on this channel, but I've also done just a lot of other stuff, from you know, reviewing Jay and Silent Bob Reboot a few months ago to I mean, Good Boys, all kinds of different Marvel films, some sci-fi stuff, you know, boy, the list goes on and on. Lots of different indie art house drama things, you know, different Oscar nominated things. I mean, I try to keep this as eclectic as possible, both past and present, and you know, going forward, I intend to maintain that. If you like spectacular stuff, and for whatever reason are not familiar with Ma from youtube.com/The Horror Show channel, yes, that is where we put up at least one episode every day, sometimes two in specific cases. Yeah, trailer reactions, film reviews, video game let's plays. We used to do convention coverage and premieres and all this other stuff. All that's kind of on hold because of the state of the world, but there's so much to binge, revisit, and discover at home, which is pretty cool. And then every single Monday evening for many, many moons, we did a live show on the Willis Greedia YouTube channel called Show Business, where we discuss weekend box office. That is a show that is reformatting with the current state of things, and with little news and with no box office numbers. It's interesting. We are still, myself, CP, the showrunner over there, Chauncey K. Robinson, and then Lindsay Mimsy, homie from My 2 Cents of Nonsense. We are trying to reformat with additional retro discussions about box office numbers, commentary, and so that's a show that is live on Monday evenings, 9 p.m. Eastern and 6 p.m. Pacific. So, I've been Fuego, y'all have been Rad Status, and until the real of Ka comes around once more, hasta luego, Cinemigos, constant readers and viewers alike. But I'm hopeful that we get to share more of this palaver sooner rather than later. Rock on.